best in life. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of my continuing series of scenario guides where we attempt to help you crush your enemies and drive them before you. Today, of course, we're looking at Serpent's Passage, which, as you all know, features a single capture the thingy mechanic. You pick up the part, run it back to your ship, and accumulate points along the way. But seriously, today's video might better be subtitled What Not to Do in Serpent's Passage as opposed to what to do, because much of the video tends to accentuate the negative. But we'll take a look at it. Now, our first segment here, I come into the scenario late, but as you can see, Destruction has just captured the part and is making a run for it. So the only thing for us to do is attempt to hold this area, the spawn point area, and I'll make that point a few times. But now, this particular video I had actually included in one of my earlier composite efforts that was entitled Nothing But the Fights 2, and back then I included it because I thought there was some decent fighting in it. We'd get a few kills along the way, but in retrospect, what it truly shows is that, yeah, we're fighting, but there's no actual teamwork here. We're just guys out banging on people. If we may pick, in this case, the chamois because he's a healer, but other than the chance opportunity to hit the same player, there's no real organization here at all. Now, the positive is that we are fighting in the correct place. If someone on your team is running the part, then of course what you want to try to do is hold this area here, hold the spawn point, so that when the part respawns, you can pick it up and run again. But our lack of organization is very quickly going to prevent us from doing that, because, for one, we're outnumbered, which sometimes leads you to ask this question, where are the rest of our guys? And so we just lack the ability to hold the point, and Destruction is going to begin to push us away from it. Now, as you'll see here in just a moment, we do score. There it is, we do score. But almost immediately after that, Destruction picks up the part and begins to run with it. So in effect, they're just going to nullify the fact that we scored because we were unable to hang on to the mid area. Well, that particular scenario went down as a Destruction win. Now here, once again, we're fighting at the spawn point. One of our guys is going to pick up the salvage part, and however, instead of running with it, as you can see, he comes out and attempts to bash people with his big hammer. Well, this, of course, is one of those things that you do not want to do. Not just in Serpent's Passage, but in any scenario where you're going to run, the salvage part, the bomb, or whatever. If you're going to pick it up, score with it. Blackfire Basin is another one of those where I've seen people, pick up the flag and they just stand around. And there are a number of reasons you don't want to do that. First, the salvage part here is on a timer. If you hang on it for too long, it will respawn and you lose your opportunity to score. Second, you're not really doing your team any favors if you pick up the part and then run out to fight with it. Because if you pick up the part, your job is to run with it. And as you can see, he's essentially doing it. Now he's finally done that, he's taking off. But it's everyone else's job to either provide you cover to score, or to maintain the area so that we can attempt to score again. Now that's what you're going to see here. I advanced a little bit in this scenario, and the dwarf scored, so immediately one of our other guys picks up the part and begins to run again. So at this point in the SC, there's only one logical thing for us to do, and that is continue to fight in this area to deny Destruction access to the spawn point. And as you can see, our target focus here is a little bit better than it was at the beginning of the video. We were able to get a few kills and keep destruction generally disorganized. They're unable to make, a concentrated push in this particular scenario to get up to the spawn point. But that brings me to another point that I want to make. If your goal in playing is to win, you don't always have to annihilate the enemy. You don't have to take down every player that's out there. Sometimes you can just manage them, as it were. You can manage the fight to keep them in an area such as this, where they're not going to, they're not going to score any points here. They're not going to score any points by fighting us. So we get the dominating message, and then the scenario is quickly over.
What if there was a place with all the zip of Nuka-Cola? Wouldn't that be the cheeriest place in all the world? Where the river's made of quantum and the mountain tops are fizz, with fun and games and rides for all the moms and pops and kids. Well, it turns out there's a place with all the zip of Nuka-Cola. Come on down to Nuka World and see it for you.
Our thanks to Nuka-Cola for sponsoring the show. We appreciate it. Now here in this segment of video, as you can see, the part is open for capture. So I'm going to make an attempt to do just that. But then a witch elf of some acquaintance comes running in and prevents me from picking it up. And so the fight then centers around the salvage part. Now that, of course, happens. But destruction here is successful in drawing us away from it. I mean, I can't imagine why at this point I was concentrating on this particular character. I don't understand why I did that. But anyway, it did create an opportunity for someone else to run in and capture the part, and in this case it was a destruction player. And that was actually well done, I thought, too. And you have to do that in any scenario, any fight, is look for an opportunity to swing the advantage to your side. My only problem with it is it's a healer. And in any scenario, it's just my personal belief that healers should not be the people that are running the parts, especially here, as the part gives you no benefit, does no damage. So I'm now successful. This is a little bit later in the same SC. I now am successful in picking it up, but all I'm really doing here is making a pride run. As you can see from the score, destruction has been winning here for quite some time. They've built up, an insurmountable, literally insurmountable edge for us. But if I can score once, then at least we'll get a single emblem out of this SC. So I'm doing this just for the, just for the benefit of trying to get salvage something, no pun intended. But as you can see, destruction keeps getting the dominating message, which means my time is limited. So watch what happens here. Okay, I captured the salvage part, but because it came like 1 second too late, we got absolutely no points for it. Now in this next segment, I took this from another video that I had published earlier, but what it shows is we begin the scenario correctly. One of our guys, the Answerin, is the first one out, first one to the salvage part, and he picks it up and makes a run. And here, I was, in effect, throughout this segment of the video, I was in effect his guard bot. So I was going to follow, but he gives some very excellent advice here. He's got the part, he's going to store. Everyone else should just stay at mid. And that is how you should play it. So here, now it still looks like he has the part, but this is just a video glitch. He no longer does. But we gather up again and use the hill here to swing over toward the destruction side, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a perfectly viable option, as long as, of course, you don't just silhouette yourself along the ridgeline. You can use it to effectively mask your movement, because those down below looking up won't be able to see you moving if you hug the right side, as we did there. Now I was kind of impressed by this. His chosen comes running in, I suppose just to buy time. But if you're going to go out, do it gloriously. And he certainly did. For the remainder of this particular SC, basically what we're doing here is, I guess what I call a little SC roaming. As I mentioned, I was acting as Danceran's personal guard bot here, which is fine. I was happy to do it. He's always been one of the best Shadow Warrior players on the server. So we're just roaming around here, looking for a fight. And we find a couple guys, but again, what's evident is destruction is a bit, even at this point in the scenario, we're only up like 95 points or something, but they are a bit disorganized and allowing us to basically do what we want. I do want to make another point. One of our guys did take the salvage part, but where's he going? At this particular moment, Order has numerical superiority over the enemy in this area, so there's no reason for the White Lion player to engage in combat. We can do that for him. We can control the situation so that he can score, and then as soon as he does, someone else come in behind him and take the part again. Eventually we'll go on to win here, because by default what we're accomplishing is maintaining control of the spawn point. Our next segment of video features pre-made fighting. As you can see, Zach's on the company, the usual suspects. And as we did in Norden Watch, we attempt to employ here the strategy referred to as the Behinder. We head across the map in an attempt to catch destruction running out of their spawn point, perhaps in some long line. But lo and behold, they had the same idea. So what occurs here, quite by happenstance, is that you have two pre-mades butting heads. So now we have a decision to make, and it would be the same, for anyone else who finds himself in this situation. Which fight do we want to fight? And I talked about this in High Pass Cemetery. What is our agenda now going to be? Are we going to play to win the scenario? Or are we going to play to win the 6-man? And when you come up against a group like this, it does involve a bit of git chasing, but we make the decision that we're going to stay with this fight, which takes a while. And there are two reasons why I put this in. One is to make the point that if you get into a situation like this and you abandon any attempt to win the scenario by playing the mechanics of the scenario and just stick to the fight, okay, you can make that decision, but the consequence, of course, is that in all probability, you're going to lose the scenario. Now, for the 6-man crowd out there, as you can see, I put that message up because at this particular point in the battle, we weren't focusing that well. We took down their Slork because that was a valid target, but the target we really should be going after is himself here, and we begin to get our act together and try to do that, but it's gonna take a while. So I'm going to let this run here just for a moment. Well, I'm sorry, as you can see, while we're engaged, this goes back to the other point I was making, while we're engaged in this 6-man battle, the other guys in the scenario are playing the scenario. They are running the part and destruction is scoring. Meanwhile, we're engaged in more git chasing. Now, if any of my guildmates watch this, please understand, I'm not faulting anyone. All I'm doing is attempting to be consistent with my overall theme of creating these videos. Is, you can play a video to fight the enemy, you can play a scenario to fight the enemy, or you can play the scenario to win the scenario. And we made the decision here to win the fight, which, in context of what we were doing that night, that's perfectly fine. But the consequence of that is that we're going to lose a scenario, and we're going to lose it big time. But the fight continues. We finally took out their healer, and then we go for the DPS, the witch elf here, and take her out of the equation. And we'll go on to wrap this up. But in the meantime, Destruction is running up the score, and they come away with the victory. And there it is. Now, as I said, we chose that particular fight, and that's fine. That's the one we wanted to actually play. But I'm just trying to reinforce the point that, like the destruction forces that we faced in the High Path Cemetery footage that I included, the choice we made did, of course, have the consequence of costing us the SC. And that's a choice that everybody has to make when they go in, as of how they're going to play. Now, here is the final sequence video footage for Serpent's Passage. And you can see it begins with another fight near the spawn point location, and in a moment I'm going to make a mistake, which truthfully is why I included this little bit here. The spawn point's the salvage part is available for capture. It was right there in front of me, but I become focused on taking down this blackguard, and I'm so focused on it that another destruction player is able to slip right in behind me, pick up the part, and he even runs right by as I'm still engaged in trying to take this guy down. Now, I guess we've all been there, but it is something you want to sort of watch for, that you don't get tunnel vision. Now, here we have the part, we're running it, but we make another mistake. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, a lot of this shows, things you shouldn't do. And here we are engaged in handing our opposition an advantage. I was making a plea to return and try to control the mid. It went unanswered. And as you can see, coming in behind us, Destruction is there, and they will capture and make a run of their own. Now, we've regrouped. This is the same scenario a little bit later. And again, Destruction has lured us out to a hill fight. So a lot of players, myself included, don't for a moment think that I'm not faulting myself here, because in this particular sequence I am. Because I was just like everybody else. I got caught up in the notion of killing a few destruction players, running up my numbers, and that is, I guess there are times when that's certainly acceptable. But again, if your context, which is what I'm trying to maintain, the context of winning the scenario, then it's not a sound strategy to employ. Also, I wanted to point that out. We're behind here. Destro is racking up more points than we are. And if you're going to take time to celebrate a kill, you may want to take that into account first. You're not really helping your cause. You're not really helping your side, when it's more important to jump up and down on somebody than it is to get back here, to this point right here, and capture the salvage part. Well, one of our guys does that. So we have an opportunity. As you can see, the score at this moment is not insurmountable. This is something we could fight our way back from. The only problem is Destruction is not going to let us. What they're doing is they're about to take advantage of numbers. They have more guys down here than we do, and we kind of helped them set that up by fighting this elongated battle on the hill just prior to this. So they're going to begin a push toward the salvage part, and they're going to keep this up until the end of the scenario. Now, as you can see, one of our guys did capture the part, but the battle is moving in the direction toward the order side of the map. There was a nice punt there. They knocked the carrier back along their path, which was, well, again, well played, I thought. So one of their guys now has the part, and while he's running it, Destruction is now doing what I talked about earlier. They are now managing the fight. They are managing us. Now, true, as it just said, again, one of our guys captured the part, but it's doubtful that he's going to make it. Now, we're attempting to win, as I put it. I wanted to make that point. We are attempting to win, but so is the opposition. They are just as dedicated in this particular scenario. They are just as dedicated to winning as we are. And at the moment, they are taking advantage of the position they have put us in. So we're having to sort of move our way back toward our spawn point, and they are keeping that up. Doesn't matter, and for the ultimate outcome here, it doesn't matter that we got those particular points. They've run us all the way down here. Now you can see the score. They're up to 423. All they have to do is score one more time, and it's over. And in order to facilitate that, in order to make that happen, the only thing that is required of destruction is to keep us bottled up. So they are now accomplishing, they're now putting into practice one of the tactics I've been talking about, not only in this video, but in others, that if you can bottle your opposition up, if you can keep them in an area where, regardless of what they do, they're not going to amass any real points, then all you have to do is run out the clock and win the scenario. And that's exactly what destruction does here. So as you can see, there's the victory. Destro racks one up on us. And it was a good scenario. I mean, it was a good fight. But ultimately, they're victorious just by putting into practice some of the points that we have been discussing here. So to review, Serpent's Passage is time critical when it begins. Get out of your spawn point, get to the salvage part, and attempt to capture it first. Get the first points on the board. Also attempt to be organized, or your enemy will. You saw what happened when we had some guys just out there sort of banging around and with no real focus. I've made this point a couple times. I guess it bears repeating. If you take the part, run the part, and once somebody's running it, always attempt to defend the spawn point so that when it respawns, you'll be out there to pick it up again. The behinder strategy, it's perfectly valid. You can often catch the enemy off guard that way, just to account for the potential that they may be thinking the same thing. And manage the fight. If you can keep your enemy tied up in an area where, regardless of what they do, they're not going to rack up any real points, then that can help lead to the ultimate victory that you're looking for. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. I do appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate your time. Episode 7, we'll look at Calidor Woods. Until then, I sincerely hope that there's something in here that will prove useful to you. And take care of yourself, and we will see you next time.
The world of refreshments, the most wonderful.